But just to let you know, we're going to have first on the agenda an update from Joanne from the help desk. And then we're going to have an update on the situation in Haiti. And we have a French interpreter on the call. So our French colleague is going to be, our coordinator is going to be speaking in French. So just as a housekeeping, I think most people know how to find the interpretation. But you go to the bottom, there's like a little globe, or if you're on your phone, you also can look at where it says more and it has the dots. So where you usually go to find expressions or you want to raise your hand or something, if you click on that, then you'll see the little globe with language interpretation. So we're starting off in English. If you speak French, you can already go to the French. Or if you know both languages and you want to hear Joanne in French, you can do that. And then when we go to Haiti, if you only speak English, then you'll need to go to the interpretation to hear it translated from French to English. And then at the end of the call, we're asking people who went to SVRI to give us updates. So that we have enough time, we're going to go ahead and start. Any questions until now? I guess if you have questions, you can also write them into the chat, and Shiva will be following that. So over to you, Joanne.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you to the GBV AoR team for inviting me to join you all today. Really is a pleasure. I'd like to take the opportunity, for those that may not know me, to introduce myself. I'm Joanne Creighton. I'm the GBV AoR Helpdesk Program Director and a Senior Technical Expert for Gender-Based Violence in Emergencies with Social Development Direct, which operates the help desk on behalf of the GBV AoR and UNICEF. Next slide, please, Shiva. For those that may not be familiar with the help desk, or if you are, please allow me to give you a quick recap. The GBV AoR Helpdesk is a free and confidential technical advisory and research service for all humanitarian actors working on GBV risk mitigation, prevention and response, and at all levels, so at the local, country, regional and global levels. Next slide, please, Shiva. So I'd really like to take this opportunity to give you an update on our year to date so far and give you a snapshot of some of our published queries. We publish our queries, our written products, with the consent of the requester. So therefore, what you're seeing on the screen is not a sum total of our work this year, but rather some of the highlights. We also did provide rapid technical support, respond to requests for information, and also provide GBV humanitarian orientation support in the form of some limited coaching and mentoring support. So these are just a snapshot of some of our written products from this year so far. I'll go through a few of these in brief. We have a learning brief on the risks and opportunities for adopting the bystander intervention approaches in humanitarian settings. And this has been one of our most downloaded products so far. So if you haven't come across it yet, please do feel free to check it out. I'll signpost you to how you can access these materials in a short time. We also have produced a learning brief about the basics need to knows around GBV risks, food insecurity, and the integrated food security classification system. Also, some lessons learned from implementation of one-stop centers, a paper that takes you through what the models are, some of the existing SOPs for one-stop centers. We also have a guidance note around exit strategies to really support GBV responders when they're faced with the premature and permanent closure of GBV programming. It really sort of walks people through some really practical considerations and how to consider how you can do a safe or effective transfer or phase out in those sorts of situations. We've also produced an annotated bibliography around inclusion and participation, and also a literature review of some promising practices in relation to GBV risk mitigation in private and community-based accommodation. And last but not least, we've also produced some annotated bibliographies of GBV AoR resources that are available in Arabic, French, and Spanish. Next slide, please, Shiva. As you can imagine, the Ukraine crisis and conflict has sparked a number of queries specifically in relation to this emergency. And therefore, on the screen, you will see some of our written published products that are available in relation to responding to this conflict. They're quite diverse range of products. We supported the Ukraine GBV subcluster with a country-level secondary data review. This was in order to help inform the response and also some of the resource mobilization discussions. And this was really a privilege to support colleagues responding in real time to this crisis. We also have produced several iterations of a resource paper highlighting resources available in English and Ukrainian languages to help guide the response. Additionally, there are a number of resources in relation to accommodation, and including a really practical document to support private accommodation hosts and what they need to know when supporting women and girls fleeing Ukraine. I will pause there just to say that I think you can see that there's a number of resources related to the Ukraine crisis, and we are very cognizant that there are many other crises happening globally. And so I'd like to just take this moment just to encourage those of you that are responding to other crises not to feel that the help desk isn't here for you too. It certainly is. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you are also needing support, and I'll explain how you can access our support shortly. Next slide, please, Shiva. So where can you access some of these published documents? Well, we have a number of ways in which you can access our materials. We have all our written materials are published on the GBV AoR website, and our colleagues on the AoR have provided us with a dedicated help desk page, which can be you can use the left toolbar and search by a thematic area, a topic, or the language in which you're seeking materials to help really be able to access the materials that you might need by honing in on those. We also have resources posted on the SD Direct website, and you'll see a link that will be circulated with the presentation, and it's on the screen for you. There's a dedicated resource library on the SD Direct webpage, and I again recommend you to filter by the help desk products to help you zone in on what you might be seeking. We are, as you might expect, also in this modern age, available on Twitter through the GBV AoR, who kindly post on our behalf when we release materials and engage in other events. We're also publicizing the help desk through the SD Direct global channel. We're also on LinkedIn. And what I would say is if you're ever searching for a resource about a specific topic, you can also feel free to email us, and we can help guide you to any resources from the help desk, or indeed to others that were available published by other GBV AoR actors. Next slide, please, Shiva. So now I wanted to take the opportunity to give you a quick taster of some of the key products that we have in the pipeline and coming up for delivery in the remainder of 2022. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is very much a flavor of what we're working on right now through the core team at the help desk, and also very importantly through our roster of experts. We will be conducting, well, we are conducting a secondary data review to support the Lebanon GBV task force. Again, that's a countrywide secondary data review to inform their HRP process. We're also producing a research report. It's in a way, if you like, complementary to our learning series last year on technology facilitated GBV. But we're now doing a follow-on paper that specifically looks at the harassment of publicly visible women through technology. We have a learning brief coming up on femicide in emergencies. And this builds, you may have seen, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but there were several presentations on this topic at SVRI, and it's really important that we keep synthesizing the knowledge and learning on this topic to help support effective responses to survivors and their family and friends. We also have an annotated bibliography in the works around engaging boys to become allies in GBV prevention work. Also an annotated bibliography around collective care processes and practices, recognizing the impact this work also has on GBV IE responders. A learning brief on strategies for effective GBVI programming in particularly challenging contexts, where perhaps tolerance for GBV response or engage or even speaking about violence against women and girls can bring down threats on GBV responders or women and girls trying to access the programming. And last but not least, we'll be releasing a series of tip sheets on GBVIE related issues before the end of the year. Next slide, please, Shiva. So now I'd like to sort of say that we recognize that these are very busy and heavily crisis affected times, and that many of you, I'm sure, have never-ending to-do lists. But I just want to encourage you that the GBV AoR Helpdesk is a resource that is here for you. If you have that full plate and you're finding that you're facing a technical issue that unfortunately has to get deprioritized, or perhaps you're grappling with a challenging issue that you would appreciate speaking to a subject matter expert from the helpdesk roster or from the core team, just to think through and talk through that challenge to help generate some solutions. Or perhaps there's a piece of work that you, or an issue that you're trying to grapple with, but you feel that the first step might be some desk-based research or scoping to help lift off and give you a grounding in an issue, then again, you could reach out to the help desk to seek that type of support, and we could undertake some desk-based research for you if it relates to GBV and emergencies. So those are the types of things that we might be able to assist you with, but it's, again, not an exhaustive list. It just gives you a flavor of the types of ways in which we could be of assistance to you and to your partners. So we're here for, I would like to emphasize, we're also here very much to support women's rights organization partners that you may be working with. Next slide, please. So last but not least, for those of you that may not know how to reach us, our contact information is on the slide. Please do feel free to email us with your query. And if we receive it between Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 5:30, we will respond to you within 24 hours. Or if it falls slightly outside those UK office hours, we'll get back to you as soon as feasible on the next day of business. So that's all from the presentation itself. I think perhaps now we might have some time for question and answers if there are any. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joanne. So yeah, I just wanted to say this is the chance for people to ask questions, but also if you have been using the help desk and you want to make a comment about how you used it, was it helpful? You're welcome to also respond and or make a comment. And also, I just want to say we have 51 people on this call, which is great. And if all of you share this with your networks, then we'll reach a lot more people. So also please do, I think one of the responsibilities of being a core member, for example, is to share this with your networks in the field. I know we have some of our women-led organizations who are our new national partners in the GBV AoR. So also great if everyone shares this with your subcluster groups, with your women-led organization networks, and with others who are part of your agencies or organizations. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, or if you want to write it in the chat if you don't have access also feel free to write something in the chat. Shiva's following that. Thank you.
Hi, it's April here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm always really impressed with all of the publications, I guess, that is done by the desk. But I think it's a little bit limited in its distribution because, you know, I find out because I'm in this space and I get reminded that these are some of the, you know, publications. So, for example, just on, you know, the femicide paper, I think it would be great to find ways in which to disseminate that further to the humanitarian community, because I think, you know, just to give a concrete example, a lot of our OCHA colleagues, you know, who go on missions, sometimes discover some of these issues as if it's the first time that they're being discussed. And so I think it would be really worthwhile to find a way in which to share this much more widely with the sector, because I think sometimes we do end up producing these things and they are useful for us. But I think it's the others in the community that perhaps need a little bit more awareness to their existence. So I really want to say, you know, great work and thanks so much. And I constantly go on, like when I think about compiling a paper, I go on to see if it's already been done so that I can work off that. So I really appreciate that. Thanks.
So I'm going to actually jump in here first, Joanne, just to say, yes, the reason all of you are in this space is so that you can share it where it's relevant. And if there's new ways, you know, for example, we now have it also in our monthly update. Every time there's new materials coming out, we share it there. It's on our website. But we really depend on our members to share it out, you know, and if there's a specific issue, for example, that OCHA is asking, and you want to have a paper written on that for you to share to your colleagues that's relevant, this is also a space that you can use for that. And, you know, I think what you just mentioned, the help desk does look first at if materials already exist. If they do, they share those materials or those links to the collective materials, and they're also communicating with the community of practice. So if there's something that comes up in the community of practice that really should be referred to the help desk, that gets referred, or vice versa. But I think, you know, OCHA would be a great channel if you have a way of figuring out where there, you know, some of these articles that are relevant could be posted on the OCHA website. That would be a great thing to explore. I mean, we'd love to have everyone have a little space on their websites to share information that's particularly relevant. Over to you, Joanne, if you want to add anything. Sorry, I felt like that was an AoR comment.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much for the feedback, April, and Jennifer for the intervention. Always welcome the feedback. And I would also just add on in brief, April, always very happy to share things directly with you as they come out. So feel free to, I think I have your email, but if I don't have it already, feel free to contact me. Additionally, we do cooperate with our AoR COP colleagues, as Jennifer has said, and we've done a number of webinars in cooperation with them. And the great thing about the COP is they also put their webinars up on YouTube after. So that might be another way in which OCHA colleagues can easily access recordings after some of those webinars if they're not able to attend at the time. Thanks.
Shiva, are there any other hands up? Because I only see 4 people at a time. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone.
No, we don't have any hand up.
But you don't have to have your hand up to speak if you want to make a comment. I know some of you on here have used the help desk, and it'd be nice to also hear some of your experiences.
I'd also welcome any further ideas if there's something that's coming up for you all as a sector that we could be more an issue that we could be responsive to you as a collective group. Would be great to hear that today perhaps as well.
Yeah, and just to add in terms of, you know, trying to reach more people, the help desk, we did start this year having the help desk provide information sessions to the GBV subcluster coordination groups. So if you're a coordinator here and you haven't had that presentation for your subcluster, that's also something that you can arrange. And we do prioritize our field colleagues. So if there are operational colleagues on the ground, and there's, tight timeline, we definitely prioritize folks on the ground, and that's who we're trying to reach. But there's examples of other situations where questions get asked at the global level that are relevant to a number of contexts, and there is a steering group that considers the different issues that come up. So if you have any issues or ideas, you can raise it directly to the help desk, or you can raise it to the GBV AoR or to UNICEF, because we meet on a regular basis. So if there's no other comments or questions, we're going to turn over to Haiti. And then just to again remind people, I wrote in the chat, but you'll need to, if you don't speak French, I know a lot of you do, then you can switch over to the interpretation. We have professional interpreters on this call so that we can really maximize hearing the presentation from our colleagues in Haiti, and also to be able to ask questions after. I need to remind myself to speak more slowly. So I guess all of us can think about what it means to interpret it. But also we already heard from Taina that she has been asked a lot of questions, and so she's hoping really that you'll be able to share out what you learned today with your colleagues in your own agencies and organizations. And so introducing Taina, who is one of the coordinators in Haiti, and over to you, Taina.
Bonjour tout le monde, et merci pour l'opportunité de parler un petit peu de la situation humanitaire en Haïti, plus particulièrement l'aspect lié au VBG. Alors, comme Jennifer vient de le dire, beaucoup de collègues des autres pays envoient des messages ou des appels demandant des informations. Alors, je pense que ce matin, vous aurez l'opportunité d'avoir un aperçu de ce qui se passe en Haïti. Alors, disons que la situation humanitaire en Haïti est complexe, est très complexe, vu qu'elle est caractérisée par des crises qui s'imbriquent les unes sur les autres. Alors, Shiva, tu peux avancer. Je vais vous présenter premièrement un aperçu de la crise, comme je viens de dire, faire une petite analyse contextuelle, présenter la situation VBG, les besoins urgents et les priorités, parler des gaps identifiés dans la provision des services multisectoriels, les réponses en cours des acteurs VBG, quel est le rôle des sous-secteurs VBG, les plaidoyers et les documents stratégiques élaborés, et enfin, avoir quelques minutes pour répondre à certaines questions et préoccupations que vous pourrez avoir. On avance. Alors, comme je l'ai dit, c'est une situation humanitaire assez complexe. Il y a des événements naturels qui engendrent des catastrophes et des désastres, comme par exemple le tremblement de terre, les cyclones, etc. Il y a la crise sociopolitique et économique qui date depuis plusieurs années, qui s'intensifie au jour le jour, et ça devient pire au fur et à mesure que le temps passe. Et il y a la recrudescence des cas de choléra annoncés par le ministère à la Santé publique et à la population à la fin du mois de septembre. On avance. Alors, pour vous présenter quelques chiffres, comme vous savez, le 14 août de l'année dernière, il y a eu un grand tremblement de terre dans le grand sud du pays, affectant 3 départements. Selon la Direction générale de la protection civile, on a enregistré 2246 morts, 12 763 blessés, plus de 329 personnes disparues, avec 38 750, environ 40 000 de personnes déplacées vivant dans 89 abris non adaptés. Alors, le dernier chiffre répond au dernier rapport publié par OIM. Alors, quand on dit les abris non adaptés, ce sont entre autres des places publiques, c'est des écoles non protégées, des ruelles, des terrains vides, etc. On avance. Il y a aussi la crise sociopolitique et économique. Alors, l'année dernière, on a eu le tremblement de terre le 14 août, mais avant, soit en juin 2021, il y a eu un clash entre gangs armés à Martissan et les zones avoisinantes, où la route principale, la route nationale numéro 2 menant dans le grand sud du pays est bloquée depuis lors. Après le tremblement de terre, on a négocié des couloirs humanitaires, mais depuis septembre de l'année dernière, c'est quasi impossible. Et aussi, on a recensé, OCHA a recensé récemment plus de 1,5 million personnes qui vivent dans les zones contrôlées par les gangs armés. Donc, c'est comme une population qui est prise en otage, qui ne peut se déplacer à cause des gangs. De avril de cette année, juin et juillet, il y a eu beaucoup de clashs entre gangs armés dans les zones métropolitaines de Port-au-Prince, dans les communes de Port-au-Prince. Et bon, ce matin, j'ai lu un message d'un autre département, et c'est l'Artibonite, qui lance des SOS depuis plus de 3 jours. La population est prise en otage. Il y a des enfants qui sont restés à l'intérieur avec des parents sans eau potable, sans nourriture, et malheureusement, même la police ne peut pas voler à leur secours. Il y a les cas de kidnapping de janvier à mars de cette année, plus de 681 cas de kidnapping ont été rapportés, et 22% de cette population sont des femmes et des filles. Alors, vous imaginez que dans la majorité des cas de kidnapping, il y a des cas de viol, d'agression sexuelle, tout et tout. Et il y a la crise du carburant. La crise du carburant depuis l'année dernière jusqu'à maintenant, on ne peut s'approvisionner en carburant. Et récemment, il y a où on fait le débarquement du carburant, il y a un groupe de gangs qui contrôle cet espace. On n'arrive pas, même avec la police, on n'arrive pas à y accéder. Et c'est en ce sens que depuis septembre, on est en situation lockdown dans le pays. On ne peut aller à la banque, on ne peut aller dans les marchés, on ne peut aller au bureau. Donc, depuis septembre, même le bureau de UNFPA en Haïti est fermé, on est en télétravail. Donc, pour vous dire, c'est une situation très, 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 très complexe et entraînant des cas de violence, des cas de viol, même les rues, OK, devant tout le monde, et disons que personne n'est épargné, hein, personne n'est épargné, moi-même incluant, et au fur et à mesure, les crises perdurent, on a l'impression qu'on est en train de s'adapter, les gens s'adaptent et les pratiques deviennent normales. Les pratiques s'installent. Prenons par exemple, et même ce matin, on réfléchit si on doit prendre la rue, on doit s'habiller pour un éventuel cas de kidnapping. Et récemment, avec des amis, on était en train de discuter, est-ce qu'on ne devrait pas avoir des ARV, des pilules de lendemain dans le sac, si toutefois on est kidnappé, pour pouvoir se donner les premiers soins en attendant qu'on trouve notre libération. Si jamais c'est le cas, on avance. Et bon, ça, ici, ce sont des familles qui sont en train de déplacer pour nulle part. Alors, c'est la prochaine place publique, une prochaine école, un terrain, c'est ça la destination. On avance. Alors, pour le choléra, le ministère à la santé publique et à la population a fait état de 629 cas et avec 468 cas d'hospitalisation et 23 morts institutionnels. Bon, ça, c'est le dernier rapport de la semaine dernière. On avance. Alors, c'est quoi la situation VBG? Et la grande question qu'on me pose, c'est pour vous dire qu'en ce moment même, et on peut se dire que les femmes et les filles, particulièrement en Haïti, on est en train de vivre l'enfer. C'est le calvaire pour les femmes et les filles. Et surtout dans notre pratique, dans les crises passées en Haïti, le corps de la femme est toujours considéré comme un champ de bataille où les protagonistes se retrouvent pour se venger, pour contrôler les territoires, pour terroriser la population. Et donc, imaginez avec une seule crise, une crise politique, c'est déjà l'enfer, mais maintenant on est en train de parler des crises de carburant, des crises politiques, des crises liées à la sécurité, des crises économiques, des crises engendrées par les événements naturels. Tout ça pour vous dire, si dans un seul contexte, on devrait multiplier les risques par 10 ou par 20, là, on est dans les milliers. On avance. Alors, c'est entre autres des femmes et des filles qui sont sur les sites non adaptés, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, les places publiques, les terrains vides, les ruelles, etc. C'est des femmes et des filles qui ne pouvant pas sortir, qui sont dans des zones sous contrôle des gangs armés. Ce sont des femmes et des filles qui sont utilisées comme esclaves sexuels et incluant celles vivant avec un handicap. C'est des femmes et des filles contraintes de rester à la maison avec leur agresseur parce que, bon, avec la situation du lockdown, on est obligé de rester à la maison. Et selon les rapports qu'on a publiés, des fois, l'agresseur, c'est l'oncle, c'est le père, c'est le beau-père, etc. Il y a la limitation de mouvement. Bon, à cause du carburant, on ne peut se déplacer. À cause du lockdown, on ne peut se déplacer. Donc, l'accès aux services est vraiment, vraiment, vraiment difficile vu que certains hôpitaux sont contraints d'être fermés par manque de carburant. Même les services d'urgence ne fonctionnent presque pas. Et bon, c'est entre autres la décapitalisation des femmes. Parce que dans notre économie en Haïti, les femmes sont en majorité dans le secteur informel. Donc, c'est une économie de survie où c'est des activités au jour le jour qui permettent aux femmes de répondre aux besoins primaires de la famille. Donc, on ne peut aller au marché, on ne peut aller nulle part. C'est la décapitalisation et qui vient renforcer la féminisation de la pauvreté dans le pays. Et qui dit qu'il n'y a pas de revenus pour les femmes, il y a aussi l'augmentation des risques à la prostitution comme mécanisme de survie. On avance. Alors, pour les besoins urgents qu'on peut identifier, dans un contexte pareil, on pourrait se dire que tout est urgent. Par exemple, l'année dernière, c'est pas l'année dernière, en avril, j'ai été sur le terrain pendant le clash entre les gangs armés à Creighton. J'ai rencontré des femmes et des filles qui étaient venues sur les places publiques. Il y a une femme qui est venue me voir pour me dire, Madame, ce matin, j'ai reçu un petit sachet d'eau. J'hésitais entre le boire parce que j'avais soif et faire ma toilette. À la fin, j'ai dû boire un peu et faire ma toilette parce qu'elle était sur la place depuis plus de 3 jours. Et j'ai rencontré une autre jeune fille entre 16 et 18 ans me disant, Madame, l'année dernière, j'ai été sur cette place pour cette même situation et il y avait tellement de cas de viol. Maintenant, je me pose la question, c'est quoi le plus grand risque? Est-ce que c'est les projectiles des bandits ou c'est le viol? Madame, est-ce que tu peux me retirer de cette situation? Alors là, imaginez moi-même en train de mener des évaluations et de recevoir ces témoignages, de recevoir ces cris, recevoir ces alarmes. Donc, on pourrait se dire, bon, urgemment, c'est voir comment relocaliser ces familles, relocaliser ces femmes, ces familles monoparentales, mais malheureusement, à date, il n'y a pas de site d'hébergement adapté. C'est dire où les normes de protection sont respectées, où il y a des latrines, où il y a des douches, de l'éclairage, tout et tout. Ça, c'est quasi inexistant. Il y a aussi le besoin des kits de dignité, des lampes solaires, accompagnement des survivants et survivantes de VPG. Donc, c'est et fournir le service multisectoriel, relocalisation des familles, distribution de cash aux femmes à risque et les survivantes de VBG, la nourriture, la sécurité. Ce sont entre autres des besoins urgents identifiés à ce moment pour les femmes et les filles qui sont dans les sites de déplacés et aussi dans les zones contrôlées par les gangs armés. Et on avance. Et quels sont les gaps jusqu'à présent qu'on a identifiés dans la provision des services? Alors, c'est pour vous dire que beaucoup d'efforts ont été déployés pendant ces dernières années dans le pays, soit dans le Grand Sud ou dans le département de l'Ouest, mais beaucoup reste à faire vu que la majorité des prestataires de services fonctionnent sur une base de financement. Donc, s'il n'y a plus de financement, c'est comme les services n'existent plus. Donc, on doit toujours non seulement renforcer les capacités des acteurs, mais aussi voir dans quelle mesure on peut les accompagner pour avoir de financement pour continuer à fournir des services. Alors, il y a, par exemple, l'insuffisance des ressources humaines formées. Donc, comme vous savez, ces dernières années, beaucoup de personnel, de staff qualifiés ont laissé le pays pour d'autres pays étrangers. Donc, on a vraiment perdu beaucoup de ressources humaines qui étaient formées dans le domaine. Donc, beaucoup reste à faire encore. Insuffisance des acteurs intervenant dans la prise en charge psychologique des survivantes. Donc, c'est comme on peut compter les prestataires de services, l'insuffisance de matériel et de médicaments essentiels pour la prise en charge des survivants. Jusqu'à présent, UNFPA fournit aux prestataires de services médicaux les kits post-viol, mais beaucoup reste à faire. Il y a aussi le manque d'espace adapté pouvant permettre une offre de services complète. On avance. Quelles sont donc les réponses en cours des acteurs VBG? Pour le moment, dans ce contexte particulier, on continue à fournir la prise en charge clinique des cas de viol avec, bon, bien sûr, MSF et Médecins sans frontières, parce que comme je l'ai dit tantôt, malheureusement, les hôpitaux, les centres de santé ont dû fermer à cause du problème de carburant. Heureusement pour le département de l'Ouest, affecté surtout par la situation lockdown et l'insécurité, il y a MSF, mais pour ce faire, les acteurs sont donc obligés de fournir un support en plus pour le paiement des motocyclettes et des fois des survivants de violence sont obligés de marcher des kilomètres pour avoir accès à ce service. Les acteurs, surtout les partenaires de UNFPA, continuent à fournir l'appui psychologique à distance, par exemple, en utilisant le téléphone, en utilisant le WhatsApp, en utilisant le Zoom, et voir comment le week-end où il y a une situation beaucoup plus, c'est comme beaucoup plus calme, on fait venir les survivantes pour avoir des sessions de groupe, mais pendant la semaine, on est vraiment obligé de rester à distance. Aussi, et à ce moment, on est en train de faire la distribution de cash. Heureusement, avec le support, bien sûr, de Alice, on a pu élaborer des protocoles pour le transfert monétaire aux survivantes en utilisant le e-money. Le e-money, alors on fait un partenariat avec les partenaires et la Digicel qui a un mécanisme de transfert monétaire et utilisant le téléphone. On avance. Alors aussi, pendant cette crise, il y a dans la première photo l'accompagnement, surtout pendant le week-end où on fait la livraison des kits de dignité, des kits maman accompagnant les femmes et les filles, les femmes enceintes qui sont dans les sites de déplacés. Et l'autre photo montre l'espace sûr à Corail. Corail, c'est une commune de la Grand'Anse, un département qui a été affecté par le tremblement de terre, qui connaît aussi la crise du lockdown, mais on essaie pendant la crise d'occuper les femmes, de créer des activités et cette photo montre les activités de formation pour les activités génératrices de revenus à l'intérieur de l'espace. Là, c'est une femme qui apprend à faire du savon et qui apprend à faire du savon à l'intérieur de l'espace sûr et beaucoup de femmes étaient intéressées par cette activité. On avance. Il y a aussi la coordination est VBG. Alors, on a le niveau national, là, on continue depuis le COVID-19, on a eu des rencontres virtuelles. Donc, depuis lors, on continue avec cette méthodologie. On a une réunion mensuelle avec une participation moyenne de 30 à 35 acteurs qui regroupent entre autres les agences onusiennes, les organisations non gouvernementales internationales, des organisations nationales, des entités étatiques et des organisations communautaires de base, parce que nous autres, on travaille non seulement au niveau départemental, au niveau communal, mais aussi on travaille avec les organisations qui sont à l'intérieur des zones qui ont un ancrage communautaire, question de les aider, de leur donner accès à mettre leurs mots dans la coordination et des actions VBG, tout et tout. Et on a les structures au niveau départemental. Dans tous les départements qu'on intervient, par exemple, dans le pays, on a 10 départements. Dans chaque département où on a des interventions, on active la coordination au niveau départemental, dans le chef-lieu du département, mais aussi dans les communes les plus éloignées pour permettre aux femmes qui vivent dans les organisations de femmes qui vivent dans les zones enclavées d'avoir leurs mots sur la table, d'avoir leurs mots sur comment ils aimeraient que les services soient question de discuter avec les femmes et de fournir notre service, comme par exemple, on assiste dans la cartographie de services, on assiste aussi les organisations membres dans la définition de leur stratégie. On organise des sessions de formation pour renforcer la capacité des membres et on essaie de les aider aussi. De notre côté, on fait au fur et à mesure le transfert de connaissances, le transfert transfert de compétences, le transfert de connaissances, question d'assurer la sustainability, I don't get the word in French, la soutenabilité des projets, la pérennisation des projets. On avance. Alors ici, c'est une action particulière qu'on est en train de mener aussi au niveau pays, c'est discuter avec les différentes couches de la population, comment offrir des services adaptés. Là, sur cette photo, c'est une rencontre avec la coordonnatrice de l'Association des femmes handicapées pour voir comment les services, même à l'intérieur des espaces, soient plus inclusifs. Parce que là où l'on parle, s'il y a une femme est sourde, survivant de VBG, qui espère raconter son histoire, qui espère avoir accès au service, on pourrait se dire c'est quasiment impossible. Sinon, on fait appel à un interprète ou quelqu'un d'autre, parce que bon, le caractère inclusif de l'aide humanitaire en Haïti, ça, c'est un grand défi. C'est un grand défi, c'est un grand gap de notre côté. On essaie de faire de notre mieux afin que tous les outils, tous les documents soient adaptés. On est en train de voir comment mettre tous nos matériels de communication, surtout soit à une version audio, soit en braille, et aussi de voir comment intégrer la langue des signes dans nos interventions. On avance. Alors aussi, il y a des actions de plaidoyer et des documents stratégiques qui sont élaborés et qui sont publiés. On est en train de faire un flash appeal sous le leadership de OCHA avec les différents secteurs. Il y a aussi la publication de notes sur la continuité des services, même pendant la période des crises. On fait sortir des notes sur l'état de la situation. On participe, on contribue dans la production des rapports. Et aussi, il y a des discussions continues avec les potentiels bailleurs de fonds. Par exemple, j'ai mentionné la relocalisation des familles. Actuellement, on est en train de discuter avec un autre partenaire pour voir comment on peut relocaliser des femmes survivantes de VBG, des familles monoparentales qui sont sur les places publiques. On avance. Alors, je crois qu'on arrive à la fin de cette présentation. Si vous avez des questions, des préoccupations ou bien vous avez besoin des informations additionnelles, je crois que c'est le temps. Mais ce que je peux vous dire, c'est que on continue de faire de notre mieux et on reçoit le support du GBV AoR, soit au niveau du siège et soit au niveau du lac. On a des rencontres périodiques avec Cécilia. Je crois qu'elle est dans cette rencontre pour supporter l'équipe pays à mettre en œuvre des mécanismes pour mieux répondre à la situation. Par exemple, actuellement, on est en discussion de mettre sur place le GBV Alert dans le pays parce que notre plus grand défi ici, c'est les données. Okay? On n'arrive pas à avoir des données relatives au VBG dans le pays. Chaque année, on est en train de faire des gymnastiques pour pouvoir, et avec les membres de la coordination du secteur pour trouver des données. On est en train de mettre le GBV Alert sur place et ça, ce sera un grand accomplissement pour l'équipe pays en support, bien sûr, au ministère, à la condition féminine et aux droits des femmes. Alors, si vous avez des questions ou des préoccupations, à vous. Merci beaucoup, Shiva.
Thank you so much, Taina. Oh. Am I on the wrong channel?
We hear you, Jennifer.
Okay. I thought maybe I'm on the wrong channel. Okay. Thank you so much. And the situation sounds so difficult and complex and challenging. And I think you're doing an incredible job within the context just by being there and supporting the women that you're supporting. So I really want to honor also the hard work that you're doing in such a difficult situation, the fact that you are there with your presence. And I also want to open the floor for people who have questions. Just to say, I know that there's been more visibility lately with the report that just came out that we can share. I will turn the floor over to people that have questions, and please do ask questions because a lot of people have been approaching us at the GBV AoR. Taina said at the beginning of the call that many people have been approaching her. So this is your chance to ask questions, as she said. So Shiva, maybe you can call people who raise their hand, but you can also just turn on your microphone to ask questions.
Hi, it's April here. I don't see any hands, so forgive me if I'm jumping in front of anybody. I just wanted to say, Taina, thank you so much for that briefing. You know, we're all trying to follow, you know, the Haiti situation very closely to see what else we can do. And, you know, while we do have some visibility, it's still very hard to know exactly, you know, how grave the situation is on the ground, in particular for women and girls, and also what else we should be doing as a GBV community. You know, we're all very alarmed at the increasing prevalence of sexual violence against women and girls. So I just really wanted to ask you, what is your ask of us as a, you know, gender GBV community? What else should we be mobilizing, you know, to help with the situation? Because I'm still not clear, like, what's the ask? And it would be great to hear from you what you think needs to be done so that we can then, you know, try to action something at this end. So thank you so much for the work, and I do hope that you're staying safe. And then maybe just a second point in terms of how you're coordinating or working with the GenCap advisor, because I know that there is also a GenCap that is deployed to support Haiti. And, so be interested to hear from your perspective. But again, thank you.
Thank you, April. So, first of all, I can say that in French, I forgot. Don't worry. Alors, après ce que pour le moment on peut attendre du GBV AoR, je ne sais pas si vous êtes au courant de l'appel à l'aide du gouvernement haïtien. Alors, le gouvernement haïtien a soumis au début du mois d'octobre, je crois, un appel au système des Nations Unies, non seulement pour des interventions humanitaires accompagnées d'une intervention militaire pouvant aider à démobiliser les gangs armés et donner accès au terminal principal, terminal vareux, où on fait l'approvisionnement du carburant. Alors, c'est un process, je peux dire, il y a des discussions, il y a eu des rencontres du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies pour décider par rapport à l'appel du gouvernement. Alors, de notre côté, on pourrait voir comment entreprendre des actions de plaidoyer, de plaidoyer. Au niveau national, on le fait, mais voir comment on peut accompagner au niveau international. C'est sortir des notes, c'est comme utiliser, si je peux dire, des moyens de pression pour mettre fin à la violence faite aux femmes et aux filles en Haïti. Alors, si on a une voix non seulement au niveau local, au niveau international aussi, ça pourrait aider à mettre beaucoup plus de pression sur la communauté internationale et sur le gouvernement pour prendre des décisions. Aussi, ce que je n'ai pas mentionné, par rapport à l'impunité qui règne en Haïti, l'accès à la justice est quasi inexistant. D'ailleurs, avant la situation de crise, c'était très, très, très complexe parce que je ne sais pas si vous avez eu le rapport qu'on a publié l'année dernière après le tremblement de terre, je peux toujours partager avec vous, où dans certaines zones les plus éloignées, les survivantes, des fois, sont contraintes de se marier avec leur agresseur parce que pour la famille, c'est comme une réparation. Et des fois, un agresseur donne un meuble, un lit pour réparer de tels préjudices. Et en Haïti, depuis 2005, on a procédé à la criminalisation du viol. Depuis 2005, le viol, les agressions sexuelles sont des crimes perpétrés contre les survivants et les survivantes. Donc, c'est pour dire l'accès à la justice était déjà très, très, très difficile et maintenant, c'est quasi inexistant. Donc, on peut de ce pas faire des actions de plaidoyer à l'international, pour forcer la communauté internationale, pour forcer le gouvernement à prendre des décisions pour mettre fin à la violence faite aux femmes et aux filles. Parce que, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, maintenant, les pratiques s'installent à un niveau où un cas de viol est presque considéré comme un fait anodin. Comme un fait anodin, c'est juste un cas et puis on avance. La semaine dernière, on a publié un rapport sur des Madansara. Des Madansara, ce sont entre autres des femmes qui vivent dans les milieux les plus reculés du pays, qui sont dans le secteur informel avec de gros camions pour venir vendre à Port-au-Prince. Un camion de Madansara, plus d'une dizaine de femmes, d'adultes entre 60 et up, ont été victimes de viols collectifs. Et les vidéos circulaient un peu partout sur les réseaux sociaux. Donc, par rapport à l'impunité, les agresseurs n'ont aucun gêne, aucune contrainte pour perpétrer pour commettre leurs actes. Donc, du GBV AoR, particulièrement dans ce moment, c'est accompagner les efforts qu'on est en train de faire au niveau pays pour publier des notes, pour publier pour faire des publications pour mettre fin à cette pratique. Alors oui, il y a le GenCap en Haïti, on a des rencontres régulières. Récemment, on a eu une rencontre pour voir comment on peut joindre nos efforts sur le leadership de la coordonnatrice résidente pour poser des actions en lien à la prévention et à la réponse VBG dans tout le pays. À vous.
Thank you. Is there somebody else who would like to ask a question?
We don't
Any,
have any hands raised either, so.
Anyone want to come in with a comment or a question about maybe what your organization is doing in Haiti and how you are responding? How you're supporting, if you're one of these number of 30 to 35 organizations that are part of the cluster in Haiti, maybe you can make a comment. I know IMC was there. I don't know if Micah was on this call. I know they went in after the earthquake.
I see Lindsay has her hand raised.
Okay, Lindsay from World Vision. Thank you, Lindsay. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation and all of the really super great points. This is a little bit on the side because for World Vision, it's not about our response, but for GBV, but we're responding in other sectors. And I met with the EU mission in Joanne yesterday to try and look at other ways to scale up. And one of the big questions that have come from our sort of field teams, and actually was echoed in this meeting with the EU, is around how, like, is it possible, would it be appropriate to scale up humanitarian response, particularly from the funding perspective, when it's at least perceived that the access situation is so difficult that nobody can really move around, that nobody can really facilitate response. And one of the things that I wanted to go back to our team on, and also I was curious to maybe hear your perspective, is how possible you're finding it to deliver services, because I think sometimes the access question and saying, well, it's difficult to increase humanitarian funding, you know, because we can't move, is like, we can't move the WFP convoy, for example. But we could, and we are accessing, you know, community centers of support for GBV response, for example. So they're really different questions about access. So I guess, I'm sorry, this is more of a question than a comment, but I was wondering if you could say anything about a little bit more about what it means, what is the access to service delivery points for staff, and if how survivors, if they are able to access different service delivery points, like how is that going? And is it at a level where there is enough access that we should really be calling for more humanitarian funding to sort of scale up response? Thanks, and sorry for the toddler tears in the background.
Over to you, Taina.
L'idée, c'est que, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, il y a beaucoup d'organisations, surtout non gouvernementales internationales, qui font partie de la coordination VBG. Dans le temps, on savait avant la World Vision, peut-être qu'il y a eu des changements au sein du personnel. Je ne crois pas qu'on a en ce moment un point focal au sein de la World Vision qui fait partie de la coordination. Bon, comme on est en train de faire aussi un update du mailing list et des contacts des membres du groupe, peut-être qu'on pourrait voir comment faire le lien entre le point focal VBG en Haïti et la coordination du groupe VBG. Alors, Concernant la provision des services, même dans cette situation difficile, alors on sait que les risques sont là, on sait qu'il y a des cas, on sait que les femmes sont dans des situations assez difficiles. C'est pour ça qu'on est dans l'humanitaire, même dans les situations les plus difficiles, on doit trouver un moyen pour fournir des services, on doit trouver un moyen pour fournir des services pour assister la population. Alors, pour le moment, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? On essaie de développer une approche plus communautaire. On crée dans les zones, dans les communautés, des réseaux de protection sociale. On crée aussi des comités qui assurent la gestion des espaces qui sont dans les communes au niveau communautaire pour faire le lien entre les femmes à risque, entre les survivants et les survivants de violences dans les communautés et les fournisseurs de services. Par exemple, dans une communauté, s'il y a un cas de VBG, il y a un point focal de la communauté qui peut me contacter, qui peut contacter un membre de l'équipe et aussi qui a les contacts, on a partagé les contacts des fournisseurs de services qui sont encore opérationnels. C'est un exercice qu'on est en train de faire au fur et à mesure, faire un update des fournisseurs de services, un update assez régulier de la cartographie de services. Parce qu'un service de prise en charge et médicale, par exemple, peut fonctionner cette semaine, mais la semaine prochaine, ça ne fonctionne plus. Donc, c'est aider, c'est impliquer la communauté dans le référencement des cas de violence. Aussi, par rapport à la montée du prix du carburant sur le marché, bon, on peut se dire que c'est plus accessible. On essaie d'accompagner au niveau des coûts de transport, des coûts de transport à moto, et dans la mesure où on le peut, on facilite le transport des survivants et des survivantes de violence. Comme je l'ai dit, il y a la distribution de cash pour permettre aux familles et aux filles d'avoir accès aux services de transport, de payer des services, de payer des besoins de base, et aussi il y a lieu pour la relocalisation des familles. Je sais que la World Vision travaille dans la protection des enfants, c'est voir comment relocaliser des enfants survivants de violences ou des enfants à risque des différentes zones contrôlées par des bandits, relocalisés dans un centre d'hébergement, un orphelinat, où on pourrait assister dans la prise en charge de ces enfants. Donc, on est resté disponible pour fournir des orientations par rapport aux axes d'intervention relatifs soit à la World Vision ou quel que soit d'autres acteurs, parce qu'au sein de la coordination, c'est un support technique qu'on donne aussi aux différents membres de les aider à définir des actions en lien avec leur mandat pour fournir de l'assistance relative au VBG. À vous.
Shiva, was there a hand up that I missed?
No, we don't have anything.
Okay, I'm just thinking, you know, I know this has been an issue in Central America as well, the issue of gangs and violence, especially countries like Honduras. And I mean, Somalia is another country where it's very difficult to move around. And I think it might be good to have some kind of session where we get people together and brainstorm about innovative ways people have found to deliver services. We know a lot was learned during COVID where people weren't able to mobilize. I think Taina already mentioned remote psychosocial support. Are we providing enough support, at least to ensure remote psychosocial support? You know, and is that something we could be funding so that there's, you know, if it's online, not even everyone would have to be in the country. So maybe a follow-up point would be to consider other crisis situations or something that we learned about remote delivery of services for at least the meantime, I mean, I think right now the GBV community, we're not going to be able to ourselves send in troops or new peacekeepers or something, but just wondering if there's something we can do to already increase the support, and maybe this is a discussion we could have with people from a couple of different countries where it's so dangerous you can't move around. That's the only thing that's coming to my head. And I think it's important, that it's good that Haiti's being noticed now. So this is a window to look at how can we increase our services, our support, and find out more from Taina and the subcluster, and then at the national level and the subnational level of how we as GBV AoR community could do more. I think, so much happens on countries that are more in the media. Somalia has a spotlight right now, Ukraine spotlight continues. And I think, countries like Haiti have been forgotten at different times, and we know that the violence continues. So yeah, I think it would be good to have some further discussion on this. But anybody else want to make a comment before we move on? And you can also write things in the chat. Okay, well, thank you so much, Taina. And I know you got up quite early to have this call, and I know people like Cecilia on this call also got up early. So thank you for your support. And if there's nothing else, then we can, I said in the chat that we're going to share the reports that were mentioned that came out recently, but I think also, Taina, we're happy to share, and maybe we can look at some support to get translated the documents you were referring to that you published last year, or the one that you just published recently, and see if we can get those translated into English and share them as well. So if you're an agency that has easy access to translation services, let us know as well. So that we can look at getting some of this out. And I'm thinking if we can even just translate the PowerPoint that you shared today so that we can send it out both in French and English, that would be great. And thank you, Robin, for your comments in the chat. And feel free to, we're going to move over to SVRI, but if you want to put other comments to Taina in the chat, please feel free to do so in English or French. I think Taina reads English quite well. So we're going to move over to just talk a bit about SVRI, and we are hoping that our colleagues who are on this call can just share their experiences. We wanted to get a bit of a variety of people who have been to a couple of SVRIs, or if this was their first time to SVRI, their impressions. And also that can include suggestions of what we want to do for the next SVRI or between now and then. But I know we have a few people who've been approached, but we also want to have people who are on here who went to also share their impressions. And so I'm going to ask first Fulvia if she wants to provide some of her impressions. Over to you, Fulvia.
Hi, everyone. I was hoping I would come later, but it's okay. I can give a bit of a brief. So I think that overall, of course, it was an incredible opportunity, especially seeing a lot of you and a lot of others that are not here in person after some times, and for many for the first time actually. I think that it's incredible how the great participation in terms of attendance, but also in terms of abstracts received, and the number of diversity in terms of panels and topics, etc. I think we were more than 1,000 people, and that's overall what SVRI said, they received more than 1,000 abstracts. So I think that's a huge number. and maybe one perception I had was, of course, that it's always difficult with such a big group and also a variety of topics to make everyone always happy. So I think that, of course, certain panels were to each of us more interesting maybe than others, and a general feeling was that you were missing out on a lot of things, because as much as I was participating in interesting panels, I was interested in a lot of other things that was happening simultaneously. I think that maybe a couple of points related to, yes, the things that I found more interesting, and what and was a bit maybe yeah, some reflections, let's say. So I did really like all the discussions related to the feminist perspectives, some of how to make how to make our own sector and beyond the sector more focused on feminist approaches. Some of the examples on feminist leadership and what that meant, etc. I think that for me the panels were always pretty packed. So you would have these 4 or 5 interventions, presentations, but then limited time for question and answer and a bit of engagement. So maybe that is actually a feedback that I also provided. I think I really liked all the side events that were happening, where opportunities maybe for more group, smaller group to talk and discuss. So there was more opportunity to share, and so yes, one of them I participated in was the UNICEF led on GBV risk mitigation, and I thought those side events were opportunities to engage a bit more directly. Overall, one point which I felt is that as much as the SVRI forum is open for researchers and practitioners, I found the part dedicated to the research bit much more represented than the part on the practitioners, in the sense that I saw that many of the presentations in the panels were also very much presenting on researches, evaluations, assessments, etc. Whereas I would have liked to see also a bit more on programmatic approaches that have worked or not worked, etc., etc. And even when these were presented, were more presented from the evaluation, so the research element of the program itself, or the evaluation element of the program itself. So I think that maybe one of, I will close now, yes. One of the thoughts was how do we make sure that we have also that part more represented? And then great to see also the GBV AoR booth, and yes, that's a lot of interest also in some of the documents that were at the booth. Thank you. I'll stop here. Over.
Thank you so much, Fulvia. That was a very comprehensive and very interesting to hear, because I think each person experiences SVRI slightly differently. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank Shiva, who organized the booth for the GBV AoR. And what I loved about our booth was that, and I hope we'll have photos coming out in a future monthly updates, but we really had contributions from a number of our members, and there were things kind of taped around. It felt very much like an activist booth to me. It made me very happy to see that it had sort of that community touch to it, where lots of our members came and provided materials, and the help desk was there as well. And UNICEF was right in front, so the help desk was able to jump back and forth. So that was nice, and a big thank you to everyone here who supported the AoR table. And then I wanted to ask, and sorry, you weren't asked ahead of time, but Dashikti, you were online, so I'm wondering if you could say a few words from your own experience.
Yeah, sure. Very quickly, it was great to have everyone there, like everyone's saying, and it's such a fantastic space. So I'm glad to see that it's becoming a far more diverse space. I do hope some of the smaller discussions that were held around decolonization and feminist and women's movements are taken to the broader panels. But yeah, it's a space that I always enjoy and appreciate being able to attend. Thanks.
Thank you. And Catherine Fulton, you've been to a number of these. So do you want to say a few words of your impressions?
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. I mean, I think a lot of my impressions echoed Fulvia's. So I think, you know, she has summarized the event very well. Obviously, it was really nice to be with our people. You know, it's been a long time, so that was very energizing. There were a lot of presentations, a lot of different things going on. I echo definitely, you know, the space for practitioners, and whether, you know, we need to advocate with SVRI to have more space for practitioners or try and figure out how practitioners come together. So really talk about some of those things. I think for me, a few things that were noteworthy is definitely they have, you know, they really were very intentional on making the space more diverse. And as part of the abstract selections process, you know, I saw that also in the way they were doing it. So I think that was really appreciated. I was surprised that the number of, or the limits, or the lack of discussion on ethics. You know, at the last SVRI, there were a lot of discussions on ethics, and it was very absent this time. Which I think is something we need to raise with them, because we are very far from figuring out the ethics around this research. So, you know, I think that there warrants a discussion there. Same to Dash's comment on decolonization, you know, to have that much more present at the plenary. You know, we have a long way to go on that. So I think having some of those topics much more at the forefront is something we can advocate for. You know, the SVRI team in general is very open to feedback and comments. So I think making sure we do that is important. I think my final comment is that you know, I had a feeling like some of the research around violence against women and girls is not evolving necessarily. Felt a lot of the same from the previous two SVRIs. So what was groundbreaking and innovative, you know, two SVRIs ago is what we're still doing. And so is that, you know, my question really was, is that because of the way the abstracts are selected? Or is that because of the, you know, the sort of who is making decisions on what research is being made? So that's a question I put to everyone, right? So I don't have an answer to it. I just feel like there are a lot of the presentations were very similar. We're looking at the same things, but not necessarily learning more. And I think that we're doing so many more exciting things than some of the things that were presented. So I think that, you know, it's just a question to all of us about what we're researching, how we're researching it, what gets selected for presentation, and all of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Over to you, Taina.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. You've all said most of what I would say as well, so I'll just add what hasn't been said. I think for me, a couple of the noteworthy things were also presentations on research where there was no impact or there were unintended consequences, which I think, you know, at the last SVRI we were discussing about the fact that we don't see those don't get shared, and so all we see is when things work. So I thought it was really great to see. I mean, obviously not great that they had no impact or an unintended negative consequence, the one that was presented on on a prevention program that actually increased IPV was quite scary, but also I think very good to see that it's being documented and then that it should be taken forward. So I think, that would be good to see more of. And I think as a practice in general for all of us as practitioners or researchers, sharing when things don't go the way we plan, I think is something we should encourage in that transparency and openness. I thought it was interesting, definitely the interest in the AoR and also how many people in that space were unaware of the AoR, which of course makes sense because it's not only a humanitarian or even a primarily humanitarian space, but I think was really great to see the interest, and we signed up a lot of people to the AoR newsletter. And then I think, just to say on the practitioner space, that's definitely something that I would strongly echo, and that we talked quite a lot about, how we, or maybe looking at what we can do for the next SVRI to have that kind of dedicated space connected to or around the SVRI, or having some more opportunity for that, because there's a lot that came out of the different presentations that, particularly the pieces around what didn't work or what needs to change, how we then take that forward, what happens with that. I think there's a lot of conversations there to unpack and to think more collectively about. Thanks.
Thank you, Taina. Robin Yeager, I think I saw you earlier. I don't know, some people have jumped off. I don't know if Robin is still
Sure,
here.
I'm here to share some
Go for it.
perspective. Sure, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, well, I don't know that there's so much that I can add that hasn't been said before. The first thing I'll say is just, a real shout out to the SVRI team, because I think if you've been to former SVRIs, I think it's clear the team has worked really hard to actually incorporate feedback year after year. And I think it shows that they're really listening and taking on a really sort of Herculean task from something that started very specific and has grown so substantially. So I would give a lot of appreciation to recognizing when feedback is taken on and how space evolves. Two quick things additional. So one is, as many people said, there's so much information coming. It's impossible to take it all on. It's hard to, if you've missed a presentation about something that didn't work, you might not learn about that. And if you've seen something else, you might get snippets here and there. And I think it would be amazing. This is just sort of putting out to the universe to figure out if it could work, if it's really possible to have some sort of synthesis of evidence in a way that is so what are some of the major headlines since the last SVRI? What are some of the major things in our thinking that have shifted? What are some of the things that have gone deeper? I don't know. I think there are pieces of that happen somewhere, but I am often sort of craving something like that. I know they've tried to do that at What Works. So that's sort of one idea just to kind of put forth to the group. And the other thing I will say is, wondering, I did feel this year a little bit is SVRI going to reach sort of a tipping point? Because in many ways it feels the team has done an amazing job, and it also feels as it keeps growing, is it going to become sort of an impossible space actually to hold? So a space that is meant to highlight rigorous research and be for academics, and also be for practitioners, and also be for activists, and also be global, but be manageable, but be somewhere that people can get to, and not have too much information, but have all the information. Is there going to be a tipping point? And is that kind of an impossible space to hold? And then are there ways to think about, kind of, a secondary space for practitioners, or a debrief space, or something that's not all being held in one. But all that said, kudos to the organizers for managing to do that.
Yeah, and I hope that you write that to them directly. I'm sure they'd appreciate that, because I agree with you. It is a Herculean task, and I know they really did try hard to respond to inputs, and I think, you know, their intention to have self-care in the space, because it does become overwhelming. They tried really hard to do that as well. I think that was something that was new. Joanne, I know you spoke at the beginning, but if you wanted to have like 1 or 2 minutes to quickly say something about the help desk at SVRI.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Yes, I'd just like to say thanks to the AoR and the UNICEF booth organizers for allowing the help desk to have some space there and also engage with SVRI participants. We also provided real-time technical support to people coming up to the stand and help signpost them to resources, which was great to have that opportunity. Like others have said, it was a massive event, and I take my hat off to the SVRI organizers with over 1,000 participants from over 90 countries. That's no mean feat. I agree with many of the comments that have already been shared. I would also say, I think from our vantage point, having the AoR help desk present on the climate change brief, we got so much positive feedback, and it seems like that is a topic that people do have a lot of interest in, but I think there could have been more on that theme in the formal sessions, perhaps, to support participants who are interested in that thematic area. There was an amazing side event on this topic that I attended as well, which was hosted by the UN Women in Fiji and the Caribbean Multi-Country Office, together with many of women's organizations in the Pacific Islands. And that was a really refreshing and very feminist-centered side event, which I felt really did give a lot of key messaging for humanitarian actors to really think before intervening and going on the ground. You know, just carefully consider the response in order that it supports women's rights organizations that are already there doing the work, and is going to complement and amplify their efforts. And so that event really stood out for me. But I really appreciated the event for being in that space with so many feminists, and also to support our networking and our ongoing collaboration. So I think that the self and collective care spaces were also really important after all that engagement as well. Thanks. Over.
Thank you, Joanne. And we really need to end this call on time because, one, we have interpreters that are hired just until this time. And a really big thank you to our interpreters. And some people have a meeting in half an hour on governance, so I want to be respectful that you need a bit of a break. But I also just want to say quickly on SVRI, one of the comments I heard was, should we try to do a humanitarian SVRI? I personally would not have the capacity to organize it, but if people want to change or look at, you know, different kinds of research or different kinds of practitioners for humanitarian focus, we could talk to SVRI about taking on a day or adding a day. I'm sure they would love it if we took on that space. So that might be something to think about. Sorry for the church bells behind me. And the other thing that I wanted to say was, I had mentioned to some people at SVRI that if you heard a really sensational presenter on a topic that you think would enrich our space, I would love to, like, each time we have a call, you know, all the presentations were 8 minutes or 10 minutes, or if it was a 5-minute presentation, we would love to have your input of who you thought was a good presenter on an interesting or important topic, and we could invite them to present in this space. I'm sure after all the preparation they did for SVRI, they would love to present again. We've also discussed with Shiva approaching some of the 5-minute presenters and asking so that we could create some little mini podcasts. And maybe that's something we could find some funding for, so we can make it a little bit more professional in terms of the recording. But if these ideas sound good to you, let us know. And please do let us know which sessions stood out for you, and we can reach out to those panelists to present in a future SVRI. The next call that we have is going to be sometime during the 16 days of activism, and we're going to focus on what people in the field are doing for the 16 days. And from the global level, we're going to focus on risk mitigation and work with the other clusters. So we'll be sending information on that. Each region has their own focus in terms of what the RIGAs are doing. We'll share that out as well. Please let us know what you're doing, and we can share that in our next monthly update. Or if you have something, if you know of something innovative or interesting at the field level, let us know so that we can have them highlighted on our next call, which will probably be the last call of the year. So thank you all for joining, and please don't forget Haiti. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Martha Tureti.
Okay.
Just one thing, because some of the sessions were running concurrently that we're interested in. I don't know if it's possible for the presentations to be shared to the delegates, because of course there are other sessions could have liked to attend, but that because they were running concurrently, we were not able to do that.
So my understanding is that, and we can check in with SVRI, but they've been asking us to share our presentations to the Secretariat of SVRI so that at least the PowerPoints become available. I don't think the sessions were recorded, but the materials will be available. And also, yeah, I mean, if you have a specific session that you want us to reach out to have them present in our space, we can try to do that if you have the session and the name of the colleague. But I do think they try to upload all the information as much as possible on the SVRI site following the meetings.
Okay, thanks.
Great. And yeah, I'm also, just to say, the community of practice has also been uploading PowerPoint presentations in the community of practice for people who've sent them to Sarah and Beth. So that's another opportunity. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day, whatever time zone you're in, or evening. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.